It's a lot for the coaches to balance and for the players to catch up on. But throwing everything at these offensive linemen is exactly the way Hall of Famer Joe Thomas says the Packers ought to be handling their offensive line.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Hall of Famer Joe Thomas on the show today. I wanted to talk to him because the Packers throw so much at these offensive linemen. Jordan Morgan playing 4 positions the first 5 minutes he's in the building. It's crazy that they not only expect him to do it, but seem happy that he's doing it, that seem happy with the level at which he is doing those things. So that's crazy, number one. But then you have to compete every day. And you have to be constantly looking over your shoulder. Are they going to draft my replacement? Is one rep going to cause them to go, hey, you get in there? And maybe that is just an athlete thing. Maybe I'm just, overthinking this. Let's see what Joe Thomas has to say. Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, excuse me. Joining me now, back again, Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. And I wanted to have you on, Joe, because this offensive line for the Packers, we've talked about this before, the shuffling that they're willing to do, the cross-training that they're willing to do. They take a different approach than a lot of teams in the league. And I really wanted your insight into how that affects preparation and attitude and all these different things. So let's start there. The cross-training piece of this. You're coming into the league, you're a rookie, you played tackle, like Jordan Morgan plays tackle his whole career in Arizona. And now they're like, hey, between OTAs and mini camps, we're going to have you play all 4. Like, I imagine your mind has to just be spinning at that point with information.
Yeah, it really does, because the difference from going to a college playbook and all the different calls and the defense that you see in the NFL one is huge, right? It's an enormous change. Not only are you dealing with getting up to speed with faster, bigger, stronger guys that you're going to be playing against, but you also have to now deal with trying to figure out a playbook at multiple different positions, which is very challenging, even if you were going against college defenses, which, as we know, we're not. And so the amount of stuff that you have to learn is huge. But I've had a lot of coaches, and this goes back to the Nick Saban coaching tree, that feel, hey, we want to give them as much as we can. We're going to install the entire playbook in 3 days. We're going to throw everything at them in the first part of OTAs and minicamp, and then the first part of training camp. And then from that point on, we'll just hone things up, and we'll just keep refining and keep correcting the mistakes, rather than the old school approach that most teams used to take, which is, all right, we're going to install our inside runs today, and then tomorrow we're going to install our outside zone runs. And you just have this little progression where you kind of slowly install the whole playbook throughout training camp. And I think the downside of slowly installing things, and I've seen it from some of the offensive coordinators that I played with, is the stuff that you do first is the stuff that you're going to hit throughout training camp. So you're going to get pretty good at that. But the stuff that you install towards the end of training camp, you really don't get enough reps at it. And you don't see what your entire offense looks like from day one. And so I think it makes it really difficult to be great at everything you do. It's kind of like if you were studying for a test. The first stuff that you study and that you hit a bunch of times, you're going to really have down pat. But the stuff that you just cover right before the test is things that you probably aren't going to have in your brain, and you're not going to be able to rep quite as much. And so I think really the best approach is to throw everything at them in day one, let them swim in the off season, so that one training camp's over and you have the regular season, guys are a little bit more dialed in, because you've had reps at everything in the playbook and you see how everything fits together like a puzzle. And I think that's really where guys can master the entire playbook and feel really comfortable going into the season. And especially when you're trying to figure out where we want to put guys, like, I want to see my young guys playing multiple positions and playing and executing the entire playbook, not just inside zone or outside zone or power or however teams used to split up the install periods.
Extending that metaphor for a test, like it seems like every week though is a little bit of cramming for the test, right? Because you've got the matchups are a little different. Your game plan that week is a little bit different. There's always new stuff on the fly that you're trying to put in there. It seems like there is maybe some use in muscle memory of cramming for the test a little bit, because you have 17 weeks of cramming for the test in a way.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the NFL is really from week to week, you kind of have to scrub your brain of everything you knew the week before, and you have to start over. Because even if you're running the same plays out of the same formation and the same personnel groupings, if you're playing a 3-4 or a 4-3 defense, it's going to be blocked completely different. And so I think that's one of the benefit of throwing everything that you have at the guys in the offseason and then in training camp, is because they have to learn everything that's in the playbook. They have to be able to block 3-4, 4-3, dime defenses, nickel defenses, base defenses. And then when the season starts, you basically have to forget everything and then start completely fresh in week one. You learn everything for week one, and then you start over in week two. And when you throw everything at guys and you make them cram in the offseason, you really get a good sense of how quick these guys are as learners and what they can handle, right? And that really helps the coaching staff as they're making decisions about roster and about depth chart during training camp. And then going into the season, they feel much more comfortable understanding what guys can handle because they've had reps at it during the offseason.
Well, and you get to learn how guys learn, right? Like there is not always a one size fits all. Like, oh, this player, the reps is what is really great for him, or this other player, they all, if they see it on film, they just sort of get it, and that can allow them then to hone that, even if they're not going to change their coaching style. They sort of know, day to day, week to week, okay, these are the things that are going to help this player lock in.
Yeah, NFL coaching staffs are huge these days because they're worth it. And now that you have this huge coaching staff, you've got all these other assistants and administrators, you have the time and you have the resources to be able to say, hey, a guy like Jordan Morgan, all right, he needs a little bit extra attention on the field, walking through some of this stuff. So you've got an assistant coach who can go out there before practice or stay with him after practice and get the reps in the way that he needs for him to learn to be at his best. And so you can really customize your coaching styles and coaching strategies based on where players are and where they feel like they need to learn the best, whether it be on the field or in the classroom or watching film or one-on-one, or maybe sometimes guys don't even learn the best from coaches. And it takes one of the older guys to be able to sit down with them and spend that a little bit extra time with them. But you can get that guidance from the coaches if those players need it, if you've already gone through that rigmarole in the offseason during OTAs and training camp.
We got to use rigmarole more often in daily life.
Definitely underused.
Excellent word. The way the Packers handle training camps and even the regular season, I mean, I don't know that there are too many other teams that are fine with platooning in a playoff game like the Packers were in 2023 at offensive line. Like, that's just not a thing that normally happens, but they let the guys decide it. How do you balance this? Like, Jordan Morgan is going to compete with Rasheed Walker at left tackle, but if he doesn't win that job, maybe he gets a chance to compete with Sean Ryan at right guard. Well, those are very different asks, right? So how do you balance we got to find the best spots for these players, but also like we got to figure out best five. We got to get some cohesion with this group as it stands. It seems like that would be a really difficult line to walk for a coaching staff.
Most teams in the NFL take the approach that we want to get our best five athletes, our best five linemen on the field. And then once you've got an opportunity to find out who those best five guys are, right, you got to get them reps so that they have that cohesion that you talked about. I think the Packers are in a good situation because they have good depth. They got a lot of guys that could start, but also the flip side of that coin is, well, we don't have any dominant guys that you just know you can put in right at this position, and they're going to take that and they're going to run with it, and they're going to be an all-pro or a pro bowler. But I think when you look at the positions on the offensive line, and obviously center is the one that's the most difficult just initially because you got to be able to snap. If you don't have a guy that can snap, he's got no chance to play that position. And then from there, it's like, okay, tackle is a little bit more customized because what we're going to ask them to do, play on an island, block speed rushers, block big power rushers on the edge. Like, you got to have a certain body type and a certain player for that. But if you're able to snap the football and maybe you can handle an edge rusher, like, you could play all five of those positions pretty easily. So guard is the easiest one for somebody to compete at tackle. Maybe they don't win that spot, and then you shift them down to guard. And really within a week or two, like, they'll be able to master those fundamentals pretty quickly. And so I think really what you want to do is you want to find out, all right, who are my guys that can snap? give everybody an opportunity, right? Give them an opportunity to do the mental side of it, pointing the protections, making sure they got the calls right, and then try to figure out, all right, who can block somebody one-on-one in space at tackle? Because those are the two unique skill sets that you got to have to play those positions. And so I think once you kind of narrow it down and say, all right, this guy can block people in space at tackle, he can block big guys in a phone booth. All right, we want that player because the player that he's competing with maybe is not quite as good at those skill sets, but we think he's a really good player. And so now you can shift him down to guard. So I think you do have some flexibility, and offensive line is one of those positions that the more reps they get, the better they're going to be just in general. And so I think trying to figure out, all right, who are my best 5 linemen, and then hit those unique skill sets that they really need as much as you can in practice to find out, all right, who are my tackles? Who's going to be my center? And then you can kind of fill those other guys in with the best available at that point.
Yeah. All right, we'll get back to more with Joe Thomas in just a second here on Locked On Packers. All right, guys, listen up. You've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, right? You've heard of that. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. Plus, it's completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door, and you can read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. The Packers, I mentioned, this is a competition-based team. They love to say, we're going to just let these guys figure this out. And pro sports is different than any other job. It's just a unique beast when it comes to the way contracts work and the way that the players who with the draft pedigree and the free agency are given opportunities that maybe other guys are not. But I want to get into this competition piece of this. You were someone who, you were a very, very good player. And so early on, you established that you don't have to be looking over your shoulder. I assume, though, you did still feel that pressure. Is there a downside in being a team that's saying, hey, look, you got to go out and earn this every single rep of every single practice and every single game? And if you don't, we're going to find someone who does. Or is that just part of the business? Is that just life in the NFL?
A little bit of it's life in the NFL. I mean, the pressure that you have every day because you could be cut is pretty significant, and you're always providing for your family. It's not like being in college where they can't cut you and you're on scholarship. So there's already a level of pressure that's pretty high, but certainly when you're competing every single day for your job, it increases the pressure. And I think you want to walk that fine line as much as you can of making guys feel uncomfortable every single day, because you're going to be uncomfortable on Sundays. That's just the nature of the business, right? Yeah. You got 80,000 people watching you do your job. And if you screw up, everybody's going to notice when your quarterback's laying on the ground. And if you do a great job, nobody notices. So it's a little bit of
it's uncomfortable to block Aiden Hutchinson and Danielle Hunter and Montez Sweat too.
That's right. You're going to be in some uncomfortable situations. So certainly I think one of the secrets of the Patriot way for all those years was the way that they made everybody compete. I mean, even Tom Brady, it's not like he was competing for his job, but they rode him as hard as anybody, right? Because they wanted to make an example of him and show everybody in that room that nobody is above the team and that every single day you got to produce, because that is the nature of the business in the NFL. So I think learning that is really good. I mean, obviously you can take it too far. I had a few coaches that came from the Patriots, and so they tried to implement that. And there was definitely a lot of bad blood between the coaches and the players when we had Eric Mangini come in, because we had a starting left guard, Eric Steinbach, who'd been an alternate for the Pro Bowl, and he had a big contract and he was playing good football. But Eric Mangini came in and he made everybody compete. And so he was rotating even some of our guys who we knew were going to be the starters on the offensive line. And so I think in a situation like that, where players feel like, hey, I've already earned this, there's no reason to be playing these reindeer games with me and these mind games because I'm a professional, I'm a veteran, I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
You got to be able to walk that fine line. And so I think that's where a coach's emotional intelligence comes in, to understand how to read out a guy and understand where you're able to get the most out of him. And if he is a guy that you can kind of push him a little bit further than he's been pushed. So I think the coaching staff in Green Bay has done a good job of that in the past. And they understand how competition always does bring out the best in people, but they do have a high level of emotional intelligence. And I think they understand their players well enough to know when, hey, maybe this is a guy that we don't want to put in an unusual, uncomfortable situation and make him compete for his job when everybody knows he's going to win because he's got enough pelts on the wall from the snaps that he's put out in the NFL. So he's not a guy that we want to make put into that weird situation of competing for his job, because we know he's already giving us everything he's got.
And the Packers, I mean, the youngest team in the league, maybe that's part of the appeal here, right? Is just like, if everybody's young and hungry, then everyone understands being young and hungry is part of the thing. There aren't really any, other than Elton Jenkins, there isn't really anyone on the team who's established themselves as like, this is my spot for sure forever. And so I think that probably does bring out the best in all of these guys, but you have to fear a little bit, right? If you're a coaching staff of, there's ego like Rasheed Walker, he's gonna need a new contract in a year. Maybe it's going to be in Green Bay. Maybe it won't. Zach Tom, he's going to need a new contract in a year. Maybe it'll be in Green Bay. Maybe it won't. I think it'll be in Green Bay, but that's part of this too, right? Like everyone is still, you mentioned it, like you're still trying to feed your family. There has to be that part of you going, man, there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of hunger, especially when you have young guys. And I think competition is the best for the guys that have just been kind of riding on easy street and, just kind of put in the work, the bare minimum. And you bring somebody else in to compete for their position, all of a sudden it's going to light a fire under their ass. So I think that's a really good situation to be able to do that. But going back to my other point, I think from a coaching staff, the only risk is the risk of losing credibility with your players and making it feel phony. I'll give you an example. If they make Jordan Love compete for his job, everybody on that team knows he's not really competing. And really all you're doing is creating a distraction from what the real problems are on the team. And so obviously they're not making Jordan Love compete for his job. But if you got guys on the offensive line like an Elton Jenkins, who's been around a long time, played really good football, and you're making him compete, I think then you tend to be skewing a little bit too much towards being phony, and then the players don't trust you. So you want to make sure that you keep that trust, because once that's lost with the players, you're never going to gain it back.
Well, and there's also just the practice part of it. If you put a Sean Clifford out there, the production is just not going to be as good. So you're not getting as good a rep for everyone else because they're going to be out there with Jordan Love. It's sort of like, well, what are we doing here? Like, what is actually the point of this? David Bakhtiari said something once that I thought was, I mean, he's probably not the first person to ever think of this, but I remember him saying, he's got to block the edge in front of him 40, 45 times a game, and he has to win that block 45 times. All the defender has to do is win it once, and it can win you the game. As a lineman, how do you mentally prepare for that, understanding like, yeah, I need to win every single one of these reps. And if I have a bad rep, I still need to do this 40 more times. So I have to be able to move on. Like what is the approach that you took in those moments? You're lucky you didn't lose that many reps, but how do you set yourself up for that battle every time?
Well, it's a mindset that you just have to grow into as an offensive lineman, and it's an identity that you have to assume. And there's an old thing in offensive line groups called the mushroom club, right? And because everybody knows how you grow mushrooms, you throw them in a dark room, you throw poop on them, and then all of a sudden you open the door like 2 weeks later and you got these beautiful mushrooms. And, that's kind of the identity that you want as an offensive lineman. We call ourselves part of the mushroom club because you're never going to get any credit. All anybody's going to do is shove you in a dark room and throw crap on you, and then they're going to expect great things. But I think that's one of the reasons why offensive linemen have always been the tightest groups of any team that I've ever been on, is because you are all sharing in your suffering of not being big name celebrities. And the only reason anybody knows you is when you screw up. And so that constant stress and pressure of being perfect every single play is something that no other position has to deal with. And so I think it just brings you close, and it's something that you just have to accept if you want to be a great offensive lineman in the NFL or really at any level.
Oh, we're not done with Joe Thomas. We've got more next on Locked On Packers. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Plus, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. I know that not your position, but as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, okay, well, a lot of the stuff we're talking about with the offensive line is transportable to wide receivers, and the Packers have this same sort of issue with receivers where it's like they don't have any no doubt core pieces on this team moving forward. Do you think it's any different with those guys where there is only one ball, where only one guy can make the play every time? And we've already seen, Romeo Doubs got suspended last year because of conversations about who's getting the ball and who's not getting the ball. You bring in these receivers to compete. Well, those are more mouths to feed with these receivers.
Yeah, I think having an understanding and an expectations in that receiver room is really important, so that they understand, like, hey, we're going to get the ball to the guy who's getting open, who's doing the best job, right? Yeah. So that's the competition that you can create within a receiver room. But that's a position group that rotates, and it doesn't rely as much on communication with each other and cohesion as an offensive line unit. Yeah. So I think giving those guys a lot of reps and rotating guys through is a good thing, because it keeps them fresh. And it gives everybody an opportunity to kind of show their stuff and give them an opportunity to prove that they deserve the ball more than they'd been getting it, or they deserve to be featured in the offense. So I think that is delicate. And it's one of the things that having a veteran quarterback can really, really pay off for you, because if you got that quarterback who is the unquestioned leader, the voice in that offense, like, the receivers can complain all they want, but in the end, when daddy comes into the room and starts spanking butts, like, you're going to shut up, because he's the guy that's giving you the football, and he's the guy that has final say, because he's the most important person in the entire offense and in the entire team, really.
Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to recover from that. The last thing I want to ask you about, Joe, is there has been a transition, I think, a little bit, and we'll see. I don't know that it's a trend yet, but all of these too high coverage looks. This has been a big discussion, right, over the last couple of years. These too high safety looks, teams playing light boxes. This isn't really new. Like the Tampa 2 existed for a long time, and teams attack them by coming downhill and saying, if you're going to play light boxes, we are going to punish you in the run game. And you're seeing now the Rams, hey, we want big bodies. The Packers, Anthony Belton, 6'6", 336, kind of going outside of their normal parameters. Is this something you think is just going to continue to ebb and flow? Are we in a run game ebb and then the flow is going to change? Or is football really changing in a meaningful way, you think?
Football changes every week in the NFL. And really right now what you're seeing is, hey, all the emphasis on throwing the football, all the emphasis on these great quarterbacks that we have who also have the ability to run. Teams are like, well, I don't want to die quick. I'm backing up. I'm putting two safeties in, and they can kill us with a million paper cuts if they dare. And since most teams had gone to that pass first approach, they weren't as prepared to be able to run the football. But, the NFL is always chasing its tail with concepts. And this is no different, because all of a sudden people realize, like, okay, well, if everybody's going to play light boxes and play cover two, we're going to just take easy short throws. We're going to try to run the ball at the cornerbacks, because in Tampa 2, especially, you got to have your cornerbacks be able to tackle. Yeah. If they can't tackle, you can't play cover two. You can't play the Tampa 2, because that's your outside defender in the run game, is your cornerback. So I think it's something that you're going to see more teams emphasizing, because they saw how many teams were playing those light cover two boxes. But it's like anything else. As soon as teams start putting an extra man in the box, offenses are going to try to throw the ball down the field, because that's by far the easiest way to score points in the NFL, is to throw the ball down the field.
I said last thing, but that your answer made me think of one more thing. They changed the rule so that corners actually have to take on blocks. They can't do we're just going to cut these offensive linemen. Do you think there's an advantage to be gained here, doing more of trying to make corners take on blocks, run more, whether it's toss, pin, pull, those kinds of things, to go and make those corners take on blocks and tackle? Because They used to be able to just blow up these blocks, and now they actually have to take on.
As an offensive lineman, even though it would benefit me, I don't really like that rule because I think it's just not fair. Like, you've got a 320-pound man who's got a full steam ahead coming at that cornerback, and the guy's 180 pounds, and you're not allowing him to just go low and take out the block. So I don't really like the rule in general. I mean, I know it's a player safety thing, but I'm wondering, like, what is the corner going to do? He's not going to face up a 320-pound guard pulling around and try to defeat the block like a linebacker would. I mean, he's going to try to obviously
take advantage of it. Let's go.
Yeah, I think you can try. The problem is, if you try to spam anything in the NFL, defensive coordinators are so good at changing quickly that, like, you can think, all right, we're just going to run pin pull or get outside 3-4 times on this drive. But as soon as you do it twice, the defense is going to change and they're going to nip you in the butt on it. So I think it's really hard to just go overboard on any one concept, because schematically on defense, they can eliminate whatever thing you're going to do if they know it's coming pretty much without fail. And so I do think it's important that you do want to test the edges, and you do want to be able to have good answers if teams are going to play cover two. And one of those is to try to get outside and make your corners tackle, but it's not something that you can just really feature, like, say, a downfield passing game or, outside zone, because there's too many ways to just stop it. And then if you're in a drive and it's 1st and 10 and you're like, all right, we're going to run pin pull, and let's say they fire the corner or they bring a rotation and then now they're overloaded over there. Like, you get a -4-yard run on 1st down and now it's 2nd and 14. The chances of you getting a 1st down are like close to 0. I know it's not really that close, but it's like in the 20s.
And there's you can't really run play action off of it, right? Like, you run outside zone. It's easy to run a million play action concepts off that. You run pin pull or any kind of toss, it's really hard, like, to get a legitimate run fake off those kinds of things. So I think that's part of the reason why we don't see it as much either. Joe, we could talk all day. I appreciate it so much. And hopefully we get a chance to talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Peter.
All right. Thanks to Joe Thomas for joining us today. He just delivers every single time. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, but not every player is able to communicate with the effectiveness and there was some good color in there, some of it off color a little bit. But I appreciated it. We had a great time. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. I certainly had a great time talking to Joe, as I always do. We are back on Friday. My conversation with Peacock and Williamson about, are the Packers being disrespected? Ooh, that's a good one. Where they stand, this receiver room, Jordan Love, all kinds of fun stuff. That's coming up on Friday on Locked On Packers. We're back next week with 3 more episodes, and then we're going to come back with our 5 days a week as we hit July, like mid-July. And we're just days away then from training camp. So that's all coming up here as part of Locked On Packers. Of course, follow me on the social medias, follow the podcast wherever you get podcasts, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Maybe that's on YouTube where you can watch us so you can stay Locked On Packers.